So man, they just had court, and let me tell you something. I actually am going to say K Flock is one of the luckiest individuals that y'all ever are going to hear about because he did something in New York I didn't even think was possible, and that's get away with murder. But I want y'all to hear this no, let's go to the court and then hear the press release. Sounds fair? Let's go. Okay, now it's sentencing of Bronx drug rapper K Flock slash Kevin Perez, U.S. asking for 50 years. Inner City Press did a book about the trial. Amazon.com/DP/BOF27BY7B3 and we'll live tweet the thread below. So shout out to Inner City Press, man. I'ma always run his shit because I think he cool. From Takashi 69 to K Flock, Matthew Russell Lee, 206. Defense counsel Ashley has gone back into the holding cell to speak with K5. Note, during the trial, a witness from the Bronx said she'd read her brother's testimony on Inner City Press, and it wasn't true. 2:15 p.m. K5 has been brought out of the holding cell, sits next to his lawyer, prosecutors at the front table. All rise. Ashley, I'd like a sealed session in the robing room. Only the lawyers. Judge Lemon. Mr. Perez, do you consent? Perez, yes, sir. Lawyers and judges, Lehman, go out through the side door. Perez slash K5 remains alone at defense table. Presumably, Judge Lehman will give a summary when they come out, and it should be transcribed. We'll see. Bam! Y'all want to make some free money? Hit free cash. Yep, hit that QR code right there. Hit free cash. Play hundreds of games. Get on that platform. Win some money. How? Just play these dang games. Once y'all play the games, win your money. They're not selling you content. They're not selling you info. They're not selling you any doggone thing. Just click right there or tap the link in the description. And buddy, let me tell you, you're going to get your money on. It's holiday season, ain't it? So man, I know a lot of y'all just scrolling, playing your games. Why not get paid to do the same thing? Hundreds of games to choose from. Click right here to see if your favorite is in there. Other than that, let's get back to the content. They're back. Judge Lehman. I'm confident that discussion was appropriate to have in the robing room. It involved purely housekeeping matters. Mr. Perez was convicted on counts 1, 4, and 5 of the indictment. I have received letters in the U.S. reply. Judge Lehman. The pre-sentencing report is silent on forfeiture and restitution. AUSA. We're not seeking either. Judge Lehman. Are the victims to address the court? AUSA. No. Judge Lehman. Have they been notified? AUSA, yes. Judge Lehman. The parties dispute the guidelines. Mr. Ashley, I've looked at your arguments. I can still hear from you, or I am ready to address them on the papers. Ashley, I rely on my papers. Judge Lehman. I consider the grazing to be 4 points. AUSA. It ultimately doesn't impact the calculation. Judge Lehman. I presided over the trial. I agree with the government and probation on the disputed issues. Mr. Perez engaged in a conspiracy that involved murder. The defense challenges his role in 3 shootings. Judge Lehman. On June 20th, 2020, between Sevside and the 800s, there was shooting. The defense says that defendant learned about the shooting after it occurred. I find to the contrary. He texts, we just made 2 movies on the 8. We was 2 poles deep, referring to 2 guns. Judge Lehman. I evaluated Mr. Brockington's testimony and found it credible. I have re-reviewed it in anticipation of this sentencing. He said Mr. Perez told him, you know I got you. Mr. Perez says it was impeached by the sister and he bandaged his hands. Judge Lehman. The call could have taken place before the sister saw the bandages. The sister still lives in the community and has relationships in the community. Mr. Brockington presented as a disinterested witness. Judge Lehman. 2 hours after he wrote, I flocked back, meaning he retaliated. On August 10, 2020, 2 individuals ran up and opened fire. Elijah Cook and a 16-year-old girl were shot. Mr. Perez told Cook to stay outside. Eli got shot. Or, what did I say, Ely? Anyways, Eli got shot. He walking up with a cane. Judge Lehman. He rapped about spinning through rival neighborhoods. He celebrated the acts of violence committed. In light of that evidence, each act was in furtherance of the conspiracy of which Mr. Perez was convicted. Judge Lehman. Mr. Perez argues he could not have been a leader due to mental issues, but he recruited accomplices, including into bank fraud. He provided direction, including for shootings. Mr. Brockington said Perez was the leader of DOA. Judge Lehman. As to intellectual deficits, It is undermined by the evidence from trial. A successful musician, each victim is counted toward the offense level. I note that even though Eli was shot twice, these do not constitute one composite harm. Judge Lehman. The adjusted offense level for the shooting at River Park Towers is 33. The guideline is 480 months. Let me hear it from the government. AUSA. The government is asking for 50 years. This is not an axe we make lightly. The court has sat through trial. AUSA. They put out a song how Eli has a hole in his mouth. The defendant taunted his rival in his music and on social media. What made him unique is that he was very good at celebrating his violence. He had a following in this city that few had. AUSA. Crime in the 48 precinct went down after this indictment. July of 2021, his friend Jay Rip was murdered. The defendant went on social media and said there would be retribution. In private Instagram messages, he taunted a rival. AUSA. There were opportunities to step back. He already had his record deal. He takes selfies with him gun, and another life is lost. It's not clear in the 4 years since that time that he has learned anything. After the verdict, someone posted, "All rats must die." AUSA, he used his following to further the gang war. Unlike others, this is a unique as a violence and gang case. In light of his significant following, send a message to the lawful residents of 4646 Park Avenue, Riverview Towers, Mapes Avenue, and 179th Street. Judge Lehman. I don't have other questions right now. Ashley. My client Kevin Perez is 22 years old. He was acquitted of murder in aid of racketeering. We're asking for 10 years. He was a boy from 14 in 2017. He self-surrendered at 21. Ashley. The government urges what we view as a trial penalty to keep my client in prison past the age of retirement. The pretrial offer was 30 years to life. That was acceptable to them for murder. Now, on lesser charges, 50? Damn, that's a pretty good argument. I ain't gonna hold you. Yeah, to keep it on the cool, bro, that's a good argument. Ashley. Ms. Perez was born in 2023. He grew up in some of the most violent neighborhoods in the county. In Belmont/East Tremont, 46% deaths are due to poverty or violence. Her mother did her best. She had a full-time job. At 11, he had a run-in with the law. Ashley. By the age of 12, he was being groomed by the government's witness, Mr. Brockington. He's the one who started Sevside, DOA. Kevin made money to pay for home expenses. He was taken advantage of. When asked how many times he was shot at, he said too many times to count. He suffered astounding loss, including J. Ron Elliott, JB shot at 16, Miguel shot at 19, JoJo, Naz, Jonathan beaten to death in a police van. Another of the government's witnesses was a killer who admitted a desire to hurt Mr. Perez. Society failed to protect Kevin Perez. Respect the jury's verdict on, I don't know how to say this, Housecar Hernandez. In the November 10, 2021 shooting, there were no victims. There were mitigating circumstances. Mr. Perez intends to address the court today. There is rehabilitation possibilities. 10 years would be enough. Considered the JDA, Juvenile Delinquency Act. We propose an 11-point punishment plan. Music industry figures as third-party custodians move to Los Angeles and get a GED, 300 hours of community service each year. There are record company contracts available to them, or the 10 years. Judge Lehman, I have no questions. Mr. Perez, you are not required to address the court, but now would be the time if you wish. K-Fly, yes, sir. What I was at 18 is not what I am today. I feel like this time of my journey rising me up as a man. I grew up in a rough place. I began to support my family at 12. I was just a kid. I didn't really know better. I found God. I feel like sometimes you got to go through the darkness to find life. I could have been dead. That's all I have to say. Judge. Break, then I'll sentence. All rise. Judge Lehman. The guideline is 480 months with a 10-year minimum consecutive. I've given a lot of thought to this. In the months since the trial of this case, just punishment is to right wrongs and reassert values. Judge Lehman. Ms. Perez, I hold you responsible for 4 shootings, 7 victims. You are lucky no one was killed in those instances. I am not considering the incident when you shot and killed a victim. These crimes were part of a pattern that would have continued. I have no doubt you encourage others to engage in violence. That's what the evidence at trial showed. You taunted, you celebrated. You helped to create the culture of violence, a climate of fear. You triggered retaliation. You encouraged young people to join gangs. Your life was ruined by gang activity, but you encouraged others to join. You will not be punished for murder, but this requires just about the most serious punishment this court can impose. Gang sentences must send a message. There are many young people in this city like you, recruited by gangs. They must be shown there are costs. The facts indicate you need to be incapacitated. You've shown no real remorse. You had a right at trial. I haven't heard you express sympathy for the victims of the shootings. You shot the bullet that killed an innocent man, though you were not found guilty of murder. You have not grasped what you have done. There's the jury verdict that you are a dangerous man. You engaged in violence from 11 to 22. It's sad and tragic. You are a danger to the community. But you're also a young man, creative. You'll have opportunities when you get out. I'm not going to impose a dramatic sentence called for by the government in probation. Mr. Razan got 14 years for 2 shootings, not 4. He accepted responsibility. In your case, too, there are mitigating facts. You are young. You lost 6 friends. Your mother's letter was heartbreaking. She hopes that you can use your experience to help others. No one is as bad as their worst acts. You spent a year in solitary on Rikers when you were 18. God damn. Ms. Perez, I sentence you to 300 months or 30 years. After the 30 years, there will be supervised release. You have a history of marijuana usage. You must submit to a search. You must not associate with any gang members, in particular, Southside DOA. I'm not saying you can't go there in 30 years. I want to thank those that came and those who sent letter. It's not an easy moment. Judge, that concludes it. Story coming. So I think that's going to end up 300 months and this sentence 25 years. You want to know what's not a deterrent? Poverty. You want to know what will send people straight back to jails and prisons alike? Poverty. Poor people tend to be poor-minded until they realize something bigger than themselves, and that's their piece of the pie. But it's hard to deal with when you're dealing with every single day things like poverty. I want y'all to see how the U.S. Attorney's Office decided to prompt this up while taking no responsibility. Roll it. Bronx street gang leader and rapper Kevin Perez, a.k.a. K-Flock, sentenced to 30 years for gang-related shootings. United States Attorney for the Southern District of California, Jay Clayton, announced that Kevin Perez, a.k.a. K-Flock, was sentenced today to 30 years in prison for committing violent crimes as the leader of a Bronx-based gang known as Southside/DOA. In March 2025, a jury convicted Perez of racketeering conspiracy, attempted murder, and assault with a deadly weapon in the aid of racketeering and a firearm discharge, an offense following a 2-week trial before U.S. District Judge Louis J. Lehman, who imposed today's sentence. Kevin Perez used violence and fame to fuel fear, intimidation across the Bronx, said U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. Perez and his gang members carried out a string of shootings that struck both rival gang members and innocent bystanders. Perez also used his platform as a prominent rapper to celebrate his violence, threatening his rivals, bragging about his shootings, and taunting his victims. His brazen actions unleashed a series of back-and-forth retaliatory shootings that killed and injured far too many people in the Bronx. Thanks to the hard work of the women and men of this office and our law enforcement partners, today's sentence brings New Yorkers what they want: violent, gun-toting gang leaders off our streets. According to the indictment, public court filings, and the evidence presented at Perez's trial, since at least 2020, Perez was the leader of a gang based on East 187th Street in the Bronx, known as Southside DOA, which is short for dumping on or shooting anything or dead on arrival. Members of the gang committed violence against gang rivals to protect their territory, enhance the reputation and wealth of Southside/DOA, and increase their status within the gang. The gang primarily supported itself through bank and wire fraud, which in turn funded Perez's music career. Throughout 2020 and until his arrest in late 2021, Perez and his co-conspirators carried out a string of shootings. The violence included a June 2020, I know, right? Shooting in which gang rival was struck in the jaw and several other victims were hit. Days after the shooting, Perez and his co-conspirators put out a music video that bragged about the shooting. Perez was also held responsible for attempted murders on June 26, 2020, August 10, 2020, and November 10, 2021, which collectively resulted in multiple people being shot. The evidence also showed that while committing this violence, Perez used his status as a recognized drill rap artist to celebrate his gang crimes. Perez put out songs, several of which received millions of views, that glorified his violence, threatened more of it, and taunted rival gang members who had been murdered. In imposing today's sentence, Judge Liebman remarked that the defendant taunted, celebrated, and created a culture of violence, and that the harm defendant caused was immense. In addition to his prison term, Perez, 22, of the Bronx, New York, was sentenced to 5 years of supervised release. Mr. Clayton praised the outstanding investigative work of the New York City Police Department and Department of Homeland Security Investigations, and also thanked the New York County District Attorney's Office for its assistance. This case is being handled by the Office of Violent by the Office's Violent Organizations and Crime Unit. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Nequane, Michael R. Herman, Patrick R. Maroney, Elizabeth A. Espinosa, and Jim Lidenberg are in charge of the prosecution with the assistance of paralegal specialists Anaya Sankar and David Nagil. Contact Nicole Bates, Shell Rashford, 212-637-2600. Updated December 16, 2025. There are a bevy of individuals and a ton of individuals, and I understand where you're coming from. So let me not say this without you people essentially trying to make it as though I'm trying to escape or scapegoat the government. Your mayor's office has a budget, and a lot of the times they fatten their own people's pockets. So what I mean is this, right? And some of y'all will get it, some of y'all won't, and I'll walk you through this as quick as possible and try to make it as entertaining as possible. So we will say the federal government is your rich granddaddy, all right? Cool. You got your rich granddaddy. Your rich granddaddy has to give out money every single year because your parents, aka your governors, take money that has been paid by their kids, meaning their cities. So the kids pay what's called taxes to the fathers, right? So the dads give the money to the freaking grandfathers. The grandfathers turn around and give it back. So when y'all see the taxes, tax refunds, and all of this shit and everything, and they go, oh, you paid this amount, here's the money that you're going to get. So that's how y'all gonna look at taxes. When y'all pay taxes when y'all go buy food. Y'all pay taxes when y'all get, you know what I'm saying, when y'all get paid. Y'all pay personal taxes every single year. All that shit goes all the way to the grandpa. But those state taxes, all that shit that you're paying for the roads, for all of this stuff and the foods and all that shit, that goes to the father. And what ends up happening is granddaddy goes, all right, here you go. Let's get that back to the father. The father being who? Your damn governor. Watch how I get you guys with this one. It's all simple. It comes to the kids. Then the kids have what's called grandkids. Where are all the grandkids? Because your mayor is literally the child of, I just kind of messed that up. The grandfather's the president, basically, the federal government, and then the father is the state governors. The governors pay it to the mayors. The mayors are the grandkids, the grandkids, and we're the great-grandkids. That's how that goes. Anyways, long story short, if you're still following along, that's how that goes. But nobody questions the grandkids. No, they don't. They question the father and the grandfather. The grandkids are the ones who give the money out to us, the great-grandkids. Why is that important? Because what happens is this. That youngin literally is the walking embodiment of what happens when you fail children. See, the crimes of kids, statistically speaking, happen between 4 to 7 p.m. I'd even argue 8 o'clock, but I'm not going to argue that one. But Nash, what the hell does that have to do with the government, though, Nash? I'm not understanding. You mean the government is responsible for this shit? The government plays a part. Ultimately, it falls on the mother and the father. And I put the mom first because the mom carries the term and all this shit and decides to say, I'm going to have this child. Fathers have no right to say, I want you to get rid of the kid. I don't want to have a baby, because ultimately that's on the woman. Y'all can argue with whomever you want. So if you would have taken care of that kid and would have kept that kid narrow and straight and had him focus out his energy and live out his interest, that's how we save the children. But the horrible apples, because there's bad apples, then there's horrible apples. The horrible apples are the ones who decide they're going to go out, shoot and kill and try to kill and all of this shit. They were screwed over anyways because people seen their ignorance and preyed upon it. Now, ultimately, it all goes to KFOC because you knew what the hell you was doing. And I don't know why your lawyer didn't advise you to take some type of culpability and responsibility. I think what happens is these cats get to the end of these sentences and they go, oh, shit. Well, I'm still saying I'm innocent because I started this shit off with innocent. So I think that if I say I'm guilty all of a sudden at the end, that means I was never going to say that I was effing innocent. No. You just say I'm sorry for the crimes that I'm convicted of and whatever the hell and all of this shit. The judge is going to take it as you weren't convicted of every crime, but you knew you had these ones, so y'all didn't have a chance to fight it out. Y'all fought it out in court. He screwed up by not showing any contrition towards the victims. You know, sorry goes a very, very long way. Now, he could argue, I didn't want to say I'm sorry because civilly I can be sued for a shit ton of things. But you was already found guilty, so that shit don't matter anymore. I'd argue this with everybody who would get mad at me for bringing up the government. Who's responsible for your roads outside your home? Who's responsible for the lights outside that blink red, yellow, green? Who's responsible for making sure that these contracts are not screwing you over? Who enforces contract law? The government. When you realize how important every single thing and every single public official is important to your everyday life, then you could understand what the hell is going on. I don't expect to sit on a soapbox and change the world, but I do plan on making sure that you there watching are at least hip to the game that's being played. And I tell you, shake your dice, jump in the game, because we are losing. It ain't got shit to do with race. It's everything to do with class. The moment you realize that, the moment you can get out of the matrix. But hey, it is what it is. I know this video ain't really gonna get any views, so I don't expect you guys to like it or none of that shit, but I had to inform you all. So click right here for the video that you really want. Little baby, jaw was squeaky ring. That nigga said, what? Click right here to find out how dumb he sounded. Or click right here for the playlist, because y'all like what we do better over here on this channel, Reloaded.